Okay, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Future Fiction Reads and another edition of Authors Behind the Page. And today I am very, very happy to have Adam Bassett on, who is the author of the freshly released book, Animus Paradox. Welcome, Adam, to the channel.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's it's really nice to have you on the channel because I read your book Animus Paradox. You were kind enough to give me an arc, so that was there it is. I've only got it on an ebook, so I can't.
This is the only physical copy in existence right now. It's a proof. The actual physical copies are on their way. I don't know if they've been shipped yet, but they are being printed at least. And those won't come out until the 17th anyway. So yeah, if you want to get it, you can get it on digital.
Yeah. I really like the I really like the cover there. I think it's got a real graphic
Thank you.
Kind of graphicness to it. And I like why the yellow? Any particular choice with the yellow?
Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I mean, like if we're being honest, I'm tapping into like the Cyberpunk 2077 kind of branding a little bit. I also just like, aside from that, I think yellow is like a really nice, like it jumps out on the shelf.
Definitely.
I mean, it's just like it's a nice eye-catching color. And I don't know, there's just something about it with like cyberpunk and thrillers and like, I don't know, it like in my head it clicked in a way that just made sense to me. I also just like the idea of like color coding these books because I wasn't intending this to become a series, but the way things are shaking out, it looks like it will become like this series of standalone books. And I like the idea of like having them all up on the shelf and you can just buy the color, you know which one you're picking out, you know?
That's a cool idea. Yeah. Well, I didn't know. What's the red one?
That was the short story collection, Digital Extremities.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess this is one of the things that I've had to explain over the last month or so is like, these books are part of a series, but you don't have to read one to get the other. They're all standalone. And kind of on top of that, they're entirely different genres. So you might not want to read all of them. Animus Paradox, the one we're going to chat about today, I think, is going to be all like, it's a cyberpunk thriller in all of the ways that you expect a cyberpunk thriller to be for the most part. Digital Extremities, on the other hand, is a short story collection. It leans more slice of life. It's like, you know, what if we did cyberpunk but all in remote and rural locations, and we focused on like the everyday lives of people who are just trying to make rent, who are just trying to help out their family, you know, all these like very kind of mundane stories, but you know, very high stakes for the people involved.
That's really cool. I mean, I really like the idea, and I think a lot more authors are doing this. Is basically having a series of standalone stories, you know, kind of playing with their sandbox, as it were, of this world or time, whatever their thing, and just kind of playing.
Yeah, or like a series of series.
Yeah,
where, like you know, you still get to have more time with the characters and everything, but you do get to hop around still. I personally really love that, especially like the standalone books version of that, because I am not a fast reader, and I would love to read more books, but it takes so much time, as I know you're well aware. You just can't get to everything, and so I really appreciate a standalone because it's like I get to enjoy this author, I get to enjoy their world and these characters, and then I get to move on to the next thing and enjoy something totally new. I really like, at the moment, I really value that variety. And that's definitely come through in my work, is like, I am writing very short books. They are all standalones. They are different genres. Like, you know, it's definitely coming through a little bit.
Yeah, I do find that, I mean, I've got loads of series that I'm kind of either started or in the middle of, but I do find that every month I try and read a shorter kind of standalone story, because I think my head just gets bogged down in far too many series and
Mhm.
and trying to keep all of that. But just because I just really enjoy, like, the 250, 300, 350 pages. Like my current read is by author Nick Snape. It's a
Yep.
kind of sci-fi post-apocalyptic. Thoroughly enjoying that at the minute. It's got some batshit crazy ideas in it, which I'm really, really, really drawn to at the minute. So yeah, but I think more authors are just kind of playing around with standalone stories.
Yeah, I don't see a ton of it, but I think we're going from like, you know, very, very low percentage of people to slightly more.
Yeah.
The prevailing wisdom, I think, is still like get people hooked on a series. But yeah, again, just like back to my own reading preferences, it's like, not only is that so time consuming, but also like, just I get bored very quickly of the characters that I'm spending time with and everything,
Mm.
because like, yeah, you read uh not you necessarily, but like there are people who have read Animus Paradox in like one day, and that's fantastic, and I'm glad that they enjoyed it, and they have a few of them have asked for more, and that's great. But I have reread that book probably a dozen times. I've spent the better part of last year and a little bit of this year with it. I'm happy to move on to the next thing. Like, as much as I love David and Mafalda in that setting of like this cyberpunk Italy and everything, I'm really proud of it. I'm very happy with it, but I'm really excited about some stuff that I have ideas for coming up after this, like where I get to explore new places in the world and new characters, and how do I approach them in new ways and everything. So that's part of the fun for me.
Yeah, awesome. So how's the release of Animus Paradox been for you so far? I know you've had a few like live launch parties.
Mhm.
How's the reception been generally for the book?
Everybody who's given it a shot seems to come away enjoying it. I haven't had any bad reviews yet. I was expecting maybe a couple people who were like disappointed this was so different than my last book, or kind of as we were chatting about a little bit before we went live, this is arguably my first thriller ever, and so I was expecting the really hardcore thriller audience to not quite gel with it for whatever reason. I don't know what that was going to be. But yeah, so for the most part, it's like all 4-star, 5-star reviews. People have been saying how much they enjoyed it. Like I said, a few people have said like, they hope they get more of these characters. We'll see.
Yeah.
No promises. So it's been really heartwarming, really encouraging, to say the least.
Excellent. So before we go into the book kind of in more depth, I do like to get a little kind of background information on the authors on the show. So what is your kind of writer's origin story? What inspired you to become a writer and an author?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to point out a specific thing. I remember writing when I was very young. I'd always been interested in the arts, just in general. I liked to draw before I started writing, and so like that, similar-ish kind of creative in identity, I guess. I probably started writing when I was around 11 or something. I had, of all things, I discovered the original Warrior Cat series, which it got me reading, and I
Yeah.
was really invested in it. And I started writing what was essentially like fan fiction of that world, just like with my own cats and my own woods, and I would draw little maps and everything. It was, looking back on it, that is probably where I fell in love with writing, even if I was always very disappointed in what I wrote. C'est la vie. Um, I fell off of it for a while. I got back into it when I was in my teens. I forget exactly when, but at some point I got stuck in a airport, picked up a military thriller, Devil's Keep by Philip Finch, and that kind of reignited my love for reading, which kind of got me back into writing. And one thing leads to another, and I started trying it again, and it just kind of like banging my head against the wall for years and years. I never found a writing community locally. I never found anything online until very, very recently.
Mm.
And so it was a lot of like teaching myself how to do this, reading and trying to bridge that gap somehow. And eventually got to a point where it was close enough, and it was time to start sharing stuff, especially like as I did find those communities online and stuff, like the Fan Fanatics and Before We Go blog, and like all those groups where there are readers and writers who are actively interested in what
Mm.
each other is doing.
Yes, I mean, being part of those communities, I mean, I find especially is incredibly nourishing for as a writer and as a reader and a writer. It just, yeah, you kind of feel like you're not alone.
Yeah, I got that sense a lot before I found these groups, because it was like, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what I'm doing well. I don't know what I'm doing poorly.
Mm.
I would share my like really early stories when I was a kid with like my parents, but I immediately knew I couldn't totally trust them, because they just were going to say that they liked whatever I did, which is great, and I'm glad they were so supportive, but it also wasn't super helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took a long time to teach myself what I liked, what I didn't, how to do things, and I'm still figuring that out, but now it's a lot easier because I have people I can run ideas by, and
Yeah.
I'm a little more aware of what is happening in publishing and indie publishing and all those things.
Mm. Were there any like specific authors or books that really kind of informed your writing, kind of profound effect on what you wrote or what you decided to write?
Yeah, I it doesn't show in these books, but Brian McClellan was a huge inspiration for a lot of the work in progress books that I've done over the years. One that I would love to come back to in particular. I just love his blend of like fantasy and industrial revolution technology is just really, really fun to me.
Mm.
People are figuring out technology as magic still exists in the world, and there's just this neat blend. The other one I would probably point to is T.R. Napper, who his book Neon Leviathan, a short story collection, all set within his cyberpunk near future fiction world. That was kind of like proof to me that something like Digital Extremities could exist.
Yeah.
That was just like such an amazing collection. It had won awards and different things, and people were really enjoying it. I for some reason until that point didn't think that a sci-fi short story collection was feasible. I probably just had never seen it before, but to read his was just like so informative for me of like, oh, like I could actually do this.
Mm. Yeah, Napper's an author I desperately need to get into. I've not read any of his books.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's really good. I have a couple of his more recent releases on the shelf back there. I got to get to them at some point soon. They're so good.
yeah, Adrian Gibson sings his praises quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
So, Animus Paradox, for any of the viewers who are with us live or will be watching a replay, pitch them your book. Let's see what.
Sure.
Let's see if you can pitch your book.
I prefer not to pitch my own book. I'm going to tell you instead what the reviewers have said and compared it to, because they're such a better judge than I am. I'm too close to the source material. Animus Paradox is a short, very short, like 220 page book about David and his wife Mafalda, who get kind of sucked into this much bigger problem than they originally anticipate when they are hired to help this sort of syndicate in the area track down somebody who stole from them. It is kind of a John Wick, Fast and Furious sort of like action film in a book. A lot of stuff happens very quickly. There's moments where people get to pause and reflect on that, and then a lot more stuff happens. Yeah, no, it's just a fun story. I had a lot of fun writing it. It's something a lot more action than I'm used to, and I'm really glad that people have been enjoying it. The big piece of feedback that I've been getting over the last week or so has really been just the book is a lot of fun, which is so great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly fun to read. I'll definitely tell you that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the John Wick thing. It was something that didn't really like occur to me as the word John Wick, but it definitely has those kind of.
Yeah,
vibes.
no, me neither. That was Paul Zariev, I think his name is.
Oh, yeah,
a reviewer for SFF Insiders. He was the one who put the pieces together and was like, "This is John Wick style action," and I was like, "I'm gonna use that forever."
Definitely. Yeah, I can totally see that. It's a good little kind of catch to get people in, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah,
Uttering the word John Wick.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know how to explain this stuff, but like, the people who are seeing it fresh are able to make those connections. So,
I mean, what is it about? What is it about like the cyberpunk genre that really fascinates you as a writer? Like, writing these the short stories that you did before, and then coming into Animus Paradox.
Yeah, I think cyberpunk is interesting just because it's so reflective of what we're going through right now as a society. I mean, cyberpunk is already here. We are already interfacing with technology in very intimate ways. It's already like our phone is on our person at all times throughout the day. We use it for work, for fun, for like literally everything. Our finances, like you name it, it's a part of us. It's not connected to us most of the time. You can make an argument, I guess, for like a Bluetooth or something. It's also, the social systems of like, how do we use technology to sort people out? Like we saw this a little bit during the Olympics, where people were using AI to like sort of foresee problems before they arose and get rid of those people and everything. I think there were stories a while ago about how like China had this social scoring system and everything, and I don't know all the details behind that, but that is cyberpunk enough for me. Like we're and with the advancement of technology in general, like we have Apple's new Vision Pro, Google Glass was a thing for a little bit. Not all of it sticks, but all of it is progressing us toward wearable technology. I mean, like the Apple Watch, for example, is like a really simple, easy example of this. So it's interesting because we're kind of already here. I'm just heightening it a little bit. And I think in that way, it makes it really relatable. Like I've had people who have never read a cyberpunk book in their life try this out and tell me how like easily accessible it was, because all of the stuff that they're hearing being described in the book is one step away from what they've already seen in real life with like cochlear implants and different things like that. So that has been really cool as well, is to like bring people into sci-fi and cyberpunk for the first time by having these really like near future relatable stories, especially with the short story collection, which was the more grounded, like, this is not high action, high octane anything. We're going to talk about like some people who are dealing with family troubles or something. And of course, Animus Paradox is sort of the counter to that, where if you do want the high action, high octane, like adventure and espionage and action, it exists in that form as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's just a lot of reasons where cyberpunk really makes sense right now in our world and our culture. And it's a very interesting topic to me. because it's also not just about the tech and this and the culture, but also about like the way all of that interacts with nature. Such a big part of cyberpunk is the decline of our, you know, or the just the this nature around us. It's about, you know, not necessarily just global warming, but that's a part of it. Also, just like pollution and like these different things that are happening in the service of the, you know, technology and advancement and all that kind of stuff. So it's just this really interesting blend to me, I guess.
Yeah, that's it's. I've really always loved that about, I mean, science fiction in general, but particularly cyberpunk, and what you just mentioned there about this kind of the further we get away from nature, the more artificial we become.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the earbuds that we wear now will then, you know, become the cochlear implants that you say, and then the, you know, these virtual visors that you see all the kids wearing these days, you know, one day they'll be eye implants, or they'll just be an overlay that goes over your eye. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to kind of, the further away we kind of distance ourselves, or lose our connection with nature and the organic, the more artificial we become.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an interesting relationship between that and the inverse of it, where I think like as you see technology become more and more prevalent in people's lives, there is also a movement away from that technology that becomes stronger and stronger. And so like, you know, how do we interpret that through the lens of a story where you know, that's part of why I really enjoy writing about these more rural, remote locations. Animus Paradox takes place in a couple of cities, but neither of them are like the scale of, you know, your Night City, Chiba City, the stuff that you're probably used to hearing about from like Neuromancer and these other classic cyberpunk stories. They are a little bit on the smaller side, and the space between them is like rolling hills, 2-lane roads, like, you know, you see a lot of greenery in between. So I think that's really interesting too, is like how have these spaces grown and changed, and how have we preserved what remains of the natural environment as well? And you know, what are those conversations like? And a lot of that happens like behind the scenes. I think in a lot of stories, it's like the contextual world building of it, but it is still like a very interesting thing to consider for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it comes through, I mean, almost as a kind of subtext to some of the scenes that you have. It's just, it's kind of there in the background, even though it's not kind of one of the most prominent sides of the book. But one aspect I really, really like about your book is that you set it in Italy. What was the choice behind that?
Yeah, so this actually comes back to the fact that the short story collection came first. Animus Paradox is sort of a spin-off of the final story in that collection.
Right.
Again, it is still a standalone, but there was like a piece of that story which went unresolved, which is fine because the original story was not about that unresolved piece of it. But you know, my editor got me thinking about it and is like, oh yeah, what did it happen there? Like what, you know, we the unresolved thing was like, you know, Mafalda is in that original short story, and she mentions looking for Hachiro, you know, and that never happens. Like that doesn't come to a resolution. David's case comes to a resolution, and so Animus Paradox is, what if we continue with that other case, basically. And so that original short story, because it was part of Digital Extremities, and that was all cyberpunk in remote and rural locations, that was set originally, like the original concept came from the fact of in central Italy, there's a old Etruscan town called Civita di Bagnoregio. I'm sorry to all the Italians. I'm likely butchering any Italian that I attempt today. I write it down. I don't speak it.
Yeah.
I make sure I spell it right. And beyond that,
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing. I've had some people ask if I'm like half Italian, and I'm like, no. But thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was sort of just like a really interesting setting. This ancient Etruscan town. It's also like today, right now, the real place is falling apart. The hill that it's resting on is crumbling and kind of eroding away. And so if nothing is done, the whole town will fall apart and crumble and all that. So there are some efforts to avoid that and preserve it. Of course, in my version of the future, the answer is we built retaining walls around the hill to keep it from falling out. And around those retaining walls, in part to fund them, a whole city emerges. And that's the fictional city of Miro Etrusca. And that's sort of where the story begins in the short story. It ends up in Civita de Bagnoregio, and then in Animus Paradox we just continue with those characters, so they're already in central Italy, and that's where the case is taking place. So the setting for Animus Paradox was not like a conscious choice so much as it was like the result of a choice that I made in the short story collection.
Right. Okay. And I mean, have you been there before, or was it a matter of kind of remote research?
No, unfortunately, I haven't made it there. I would love to at some point. But yeah, that was just like a place that I discovered, and there was a old podcast that I found with people who went and visited and talked about it. I found like different interviews about the place, people who had lived there or worked there in different ways. So like, yeah, just a lot of research into it, looking at the maps to make sure when I talked about it, the places were all in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah, just different little things like that.
Yeah. Was there any other research you had to do for the book that you kind of had to delve into the internet for?
I mean, plenty of little things. Funnily enough, like all of the recipes in the book, like there's a couple of times where
there's a lot of food in the book.
I like food as a way to help build character and help ground people in the culture where they are, and show maybe where they came from as well. So like David is a New Yorker who has traveled around the world a little bit. He's been a soldier and he's kind of ended up in central Italy. And so like he's not Italian, but he is using some of like the Italian flavors and spices and stuff when he cooks. And he's using like the cooking is also a really fun way to show what resources are available. So this far into the future, red meat is not highly available, but fish is more easy to collect and produce and all that. So one of the early scenes is him making tuna burgers, because it's showing what resources available, the fish over red meat. It's showing his character stopping to, like, he can't advance the plot right now. His wife has to figure some stuff out, and so he's like, all right, I'll clean up a little bit and I'll make some food and help, like, make sure she doesn't have to deal with like being hungry or something. So that shows his character, and it shows like him mixing the local flavors, the seasonings and everything with some stuff that just he likes. And it just, those kinds of scenes to me just do a lot of work in a lot of different ways. And I don't know, I just really enjoy them. It's a fun way to get across all that information. And those recipes are real recipes, that, or at least they began as real recipes that maybe I would like make a few tweaks to or omit the finer details of. But like, yeah, whenever I mention food, I am looking up a recipe from somewhere, making sure that it makes sense within the culture the person is in or from, and like you could go cook that.
Yeah. That's a really cool element, and it made me hungry as I read it. So, future readers, have a snack while you're eating, because you'll get hungry just reading the recipes of the book. But that's it. That's really great, because you've kind of kept that slice of life element into the thriller by having this married couple who are also private detectives, and just having the way they kind of live together as well as work together. And I really appreciated that in the book, definitely.
Yeah, I found like the story gets so chaotic with everything that happens in it. David and Math were always kind of like the grounding element. They were sort of like the normal people who had just kind of got thrust into this, and they're very capable. They can do the job, but it's way more than they expected. So yeah, they were always, it was always nice to take a moment and just like have them take a breather.
Yeah, I have to say one of my favorite character is Hachiro, who I think would probably be, if you're going to broadly talk about him, probably the John Wick samurai type character, one of the gang members. How did he come about? Because he's very, I find him very fascinating.
Yeah, he was a character that, in the original short story he's mentioned, but he's kind of just like a throwaway name to give, the Tigris and Mafalda like a reason to be working together, basically. And so for Animus Paradox, at a certain point, I realized that we would have to meet him. And I realized it would be much more interesting if he was a little more complicated than we expected. And, that sort of just led me down a rabbit hole eventually to, pull him together as this father figure and this sort of like, not quite like a sage, but like somebody who's on a path to figuring things out and like realizing things are not necessarily the way that he was taught them to be, or he has to sort of reevaluate stuff. And that's not a major plot thread, but it made him a much more interesting character to talk with, because you spend a lot of the story thinking like this person is a thief and they are someone we need to hunt down and like find and take care of, and when you meet him, he's just kind of like this nice older man.
Yeah, he's great and lethal with a sword as well.
Junichi.
Oh, no. Yeah, Junichi. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Hatsuro is the person they're looking for. Junichi.
That's
is
right. I do apologize.
That's all good. Junichi is he is also a point of view in the story. He basically takes over whenever David is just not present and we need to check something out. He just whatever the job is, he gets it done.
And he's kick-ass as well. He's definitely a kick-ass character.
Yeah, he's definitely like, David is still a little bit of that slice of life character from the short story. He's still kind of just like the guy who wants to almost just be left alone a little bit. Junichi is like, what needs doing, I will do it. It's like, I don't care how bloody it gets, I don't care how dangerous it gets, like I'm gonna do it smartly as much as I can, but we're gonna just get it, whatever it is, we're gonna get it
done. Yeah, he's great, he's fantastic. I'd like to, I mean, what's your writing process like? Do you have like any kind of habits that you have when you write? Is there times a day, any kind of particular environment that you need to be in?
Nothing in particular, at least nothing that stays consistent, aside maybe from listening to music. I very, very rarely write in silence. It's awful. But aside from that, like, it'll happen when it happens. I try to keep a goal of like some number of words per week, especially if I'm drafting something, if I'm like editing or doing formatting or something like that. There's a little bit less structure, but when I was writing Animus Paradox, it was like, I want to write, I think it was 5,000 words a week. And whenever that happened was great. Sometimes that was in the morning, or sometimes as like a break in the middle of my workday. Sometimes I would just spend all weekend writing. It really varied a lot. But my job is very flexible. My time is very flexible. I don't have enough time, but I am able to, like, if I need to carve out an hour here and there, I can absolutely do that. So I mean, that's pretty much how Animus Paradox went. Animus Paradox was very weird because I had written the short story ahead of time. I already knew all the characters. I knew their relationships. I knew what the goal was, which was to find Hatsuro and all of that kind of stuff. So I went into it pretty like much more prepared than a lot of my other stories have been. When I was working on the short story collection, there were a lot of them where it was like, we're just gonna write some drafts until something sticks, or like, there was one story where it was like, I need this to have more action, and that was my only plot thread. That was it. And eventually it turned into something that I'm very proud of, but it took a lot of trial and error and drafting something and scrapping it and trying again. Whereas this was like shockingly quick and clean, and like, it turns out if you make a plot, like you plan something out, it's just easier.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do more of that moving forward, but this was also a unique case where like I said, I had figured out all these characters already. I guess that's why people write sequels. Who knew?
I'm a terrible pantser. I mean, I've got the novella I'm writing at the minute. I have a basic idea and I know where I want it to go, but I haven't planned anything out in between. So I'm just kind of riding the wave of it. It's working at the minute, but like when I reread it, I'm gonna go, oh God,
yeah,
my character's done something back here.
Editing those is always the worst.
Yeah.
Or the most fun, because you just have so many different ways you could take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's a little all over the place with me. So I don't know. It's sort of whatever the story needs in the moment, whatever. I'll follow the thread. If I need to pants or if I need to plan, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. What kind of music do you kind of listen to when you're writing?
That also varies. It's weird. Like, some days I really enjoy that kind of classical, soothing, no lyrics music that a lot of writers say they enjoy, that helps them focus and everything. Other days I'll play Unleash the Archers, which is like hard rock. Yeah.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah. So it varies wildly. Right now I'm listening to My Chemical Romance as we speak. I cannot turn it off. It gets to the point where, like, when Spotify releases their like yearly numbers and everything, I have coworkers doing the math to figure out like what percentage of my year ended up being listening to music. Last year it was like 179,000 minutes, which equates to like roughly a third of the whole year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's probably about the same for me, actually. Yeah. I mean, I usually have maybe like some ambient vibes or classical music. If I put anything heavy on that I love, I'll just end up getting too distracted. Like if I put Ginger on, who are very heavy, yeah, I probably write so frenetic and frantic. I put them on. I don't know where my character would go with that one.
Yeah. When I was writing Animus Paradox, I got really into like glitch hop and stuff like that. So I've tried recently to like match the music to the book to see if that does anything. That was fun for a little while, but yeah, eventually I would like go back and listen to some, I don't know, some of the Unleash the Archers or like Europop or just some of the like, chill, cozy music as well. So, whatever fits the mood of the day.
Yeah. And how, tell us a little bit about how your self-publishing experience has been. Has there been things that you found harder than you thought or easier than you thought? Any expectations that were met and that weren't?
I went in without expectations. Oh, hello.
Good evening, Lamia.
Yeah, I went in without really any expectations. I had learned, roughly 8 years ago, I published something, and kind of in the back of my head, I was like, I'm a just out of college young author. It's so impressive that I published a book at all. People are gonna just want to like talk to me all about it and everything, and it's gonna be great. Like, I'm not saying my book is the best thing I'm gonna ever put out, but like, this is gonna go somewhere. It didn't go anywhere. So I took a break after that, and coming back to publishing and writing, I really tempered my expectations. And I think for the most part, that's been good. But also, I mean, sales are still slow. It's tough to get the name out there, tough to get the information out there. But people have bought it, and people who have received ARCs or have given it a shot. Anyone who is reviewing, for the most part, the reviews have been very good. Even when people didn't quite gel with it, usually they still had something where they were like, there's a piece here that I really enjoy. But for the most part, it's all like 4 or 5 star reviews, and people being very unreasonably kind, especially with Animus Paradox. Like, I genuinely did not know what to expect with this one, just because I'm so new to thrillers in general. I genuinely didn't even know this was going to be a thriller until I was like halfway through. And, I'd written, I think it was like chapter 14, which is kind of when like all the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, oh, this is like much more dramatic than I thought it was going to be. So I genuinely just had no idea what people were going to think. And so I think that aspect of it has been much better than I was expecting. Like the whole business side of like getting everything set up and published, and marketing and everything, like I'm still figuring that out. I have a better handle on like the setup and production of everything right now. But the marketing stuff, I think, is always going to be a challenge to figure out what people are interested in, how to reach them. I started up a newsletter recently just because of like all the volatility with social media platforms lately. Has really been a problem, I think, for everybody. But that was kind of an impetus for me to be like, I really need my own space. And I tried that and Discord just to sort of see which took off more. And the Discord really didn't go anywhere. The newsletter is up to like 60 something subscribers, which is like, not nothing. Having 60 people say like, I not only like your work, but I want to hear more about it when new news becomes available. Like, that's so incredible to me. So I've since disbanded the Discord to try and limit how many things I'm focused on, because it was becoming overwhelming. And focus on that, and just continue to try things, see what happens. I learned a lot from the release of Digital Extremities, about like where to spend my time. I've applied some of that in Animus Paradox, and I think I've learned a lot from this as well. Like, we'll see in the next month or so. I think a little bit more, but definitely like as the next thing rolls around, which is going to be weird because the next thing is a nonfiction reference book, so we're taking on an entirely different thing.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm both nervous and excited about that.
Many fingers in many pies. It can't be a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, the next book is all about map design and world building.
Oh, that's cool.
And like basically a book for other authors about how to improve all that. I've been a map designer off and on for several years now, and I used to lead the team at World Building Magazine, so I've got a lot of experience just talking about that. Cool. And so it's been a super fun project. I've been able to bring in some other authors and cartographers. Actually, Lamia, who either is or was in the chat, talked with me a little bit about their work, and shared their maps in the book as well. So that was one of the most fun parts for me, is getting to talk with people about their work and how they approach map design. And that has been probably the most validating thing for me as well, is like, because I wasn't sure how people would be, if people would even be interested in something like this. To have those folks, when I reach out to them and be like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Everybody that I've reached out to so far has been like so excited, like, oh my God, this is such a cool idea. Yeah, I want to be a part of it. What do you need? How can I help you? Like all that kind of stuff. So that has been very cool to see as well. And I'm going to go into that release, taking the experience of releasing Animus Paradox, Digital Extremities, and it all builds on itself, hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very interested in your map and world building book. That's I'll be looking out for that one for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping to have it come out a little bit later this year. Right now I'm in the process of finalizing a few things, and I'm going to send it off for another round of beta reads, and we'll see what happens after that.
Excellent. Yeah, the whole marketing, being a self-published author, it must be really difficult. I mean, particularly when you're working with algorithms that often work against you.
Yes.
If you haven't paid into the blue tick thing, especially with X. I mean, with Blue Sky, it's probably a bit better. You're not subject to
yes and no, because
yeah,
Blue
it's been a weird one. Blue Sky.
Blue Sky is better in the sense that the algorithm is not suppressing you. But it's worse in the fact that, like, if I post, right now it's almost 3:00 p.m. Eastern time. If I post right now, people who are looking at it right now at this time are going to see it. But if they look at it in 15, 20, 30 minutes, some other people are going to have posted and pushed mine down. And it's the only way that it gets brought back up is if someone like reshares or posts about it or whatever, like they engage with it in some way that puts it back on the top of that feed. But nobody can do that if it's pushed down. You like need a third party network, like we'll do this. I know in the like Before We Go blog chat, or in like the FanFi Addict chat, these reviewer groups where somebody will post about something and we'll bring a link to a third-party group like a Discord or something and be like, hey, I just posted about this, can you give it a share? And then like at different times people will do that. But it's so weird to like almost require that third-party network of people who can like help support you just to exist on Blue Sky. And like it's not a requirement, but it does become so much more helpful when you have that network, because your stuff is like almost like a Discord itself is like your content is just constantly being pushed down. So that is one reason why, like, in some ways I almost prefer the Threads or Instagram algorithm, because even though it can suck, it also means someone might see my post in a week. It's gonna resurface occasionally. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is trying to work on that can be so exhausting that your energy is being wasted where it could be going elsewhere.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about when I was saying, having published Digital Extremities, there were some things where it was like, I did a countdown for that book. There was 8 stories in the book. I did a countdown 8 days until the release. And that took a while to put together. And I thought it would be really fun because each countdown day would like share a little bit about that story and introduce people to the characters and talk about some of like the bonus materials you could get on Campfire and different stuff like that. So what actually happened is I would post those. People would see the days out of order. And I don't think that they really interacted with it too much, which meant the algorithm again, like further didn't emphasize it. And so anyone who did see it increasingly saw them like in a weird order or something.
Yeah.
And that just really didn't seem to work for the amount of effort that got put into it. And so for Animus Paradox, I just didn't do that at all. I just, hey, this is coming out in a few days. Hey, this is coming out tomorrow. Hey, it's out today. I'm going to be on YouTube now and chat with Luke.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go with the algorithm. Lamia says having a small writing network or community is definitely a strength in this regard. Mutual sharing at different time zones. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, and increasingly, you know, we're getting parts of these networks where everyone lives in different time zones all across the world. I do think Discord is good for that. Is that you can have a conversation, you don't necessarily lose it because it's not being swallowed by some algorithm.
Yeah.
But the problem with Discord is that I'm part of far too many, so I'm having to keep up with all of them.
Yeah, I have all. I think I have all of my Discords muted at this point, and so I have to make the conscious effort to want to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Or I'm being pinged somewhere, so it's a lot more manageable that way.
That's a good practice, I think, to have.
Yeah, because I don't want to sort through like what is probably at this point 1,000 messages that I haven't read that don't matter to me. Like, you know, I'm subscribed to like a couple of Discords for games that I play that I don't need constant interaction with, but it's a good way for me to keep up to date on like their latest update or something.
Yeah.
Or like see, you know, there's like a Ask the Devs channel, and it's always interesting to see what they're responding to in that space. But it's like I don't need that for like daily use. I'm not ever like it's a once in a while thing. You know, even arguably same for like I'm fairly active with the Fanfiatics review group, and you know, even them I've completely muted because like their conversation and interaction, as much as I enjoy it, is not like necessary for my day-to-day information. Like I will tune in when I have time, and that's as much as I can really do. Like the one thing I don't have completely muted, like I will get notifications. Like my work has a Discord group for Campfire, and I've got like a very specific set of sub channels that are not muted completely for that, where like if somebody's having a problem with the product or has a question about the reading app or whatever it is, I do get those, but like even those will not send my phone a push notification.
Yeah. So what are you reading right now, Adam? Are you reading anything good?
Yeah, I'm reading, I got it over here. I was kind of prepared, but not fully. Yes, Lamia.
100%.
I'm still learning what I have the time for. I'm like slowly cutting things out here and there. Like I just cut out Twitter. I cut out my personal Discord. I'm still feeling out a couple of the things I'm still currently doing, but yeah, definitely a lot of trial and error to see like what I'm comfortable with and what I enjoy as well. Because if I hate a platform that I'm going to regularly, I'm gonna hate just so much more of my time. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm reading Neon Noir by Nina Voss. It is a little indie cyberpunk story. I'm not very far into it yet, but it's very cool so far. It's got a very cool vibe. It's a little more traditional cyberpunk, like big city, sort of like a mystery going on with these people disappearing and everything. It's got a very cool style to it. I'm also going through Adrian Gibson's Mushroom Blues in audiobook form. I don't know if you've listened to it at all, but the production quality on that audiobook is like, and to be fair, I have not listened to many audiobooks. I'm still quite new to them, but holy shit.
I've heard lots of good things. Yeah.
There is a moment where a character is singing and he just straight up got somebody to sing in the audiobook. And it is so good. There's like, you know, somebody talks on the radio, you get that radio crackle and everything. Like it's just, it's a next level situation. Like it's so good.
That's very. I mean,
Absolutely recommend it.
yeah, I don't usually go for audiobooks because I find I can't focus
Mhm.
on it, but I might just do that one just to hear whatever. I mean, everyone who's listened to the audiobook has absolutely raved about the production.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it would. Uh, I don't know that it would keep your attention if that's an issue you normally have.
Yeah,
But even to just like, if you see like Audible has a sale or something, to just get a credit or something to hear the production quality of like, at the beginning of every chapter, he's got music playing, and it's just very well put together. Like it's reshaped my opinion on audiobooks sort of in general.
mm,
I was enjoying them. Listening to Mushroom Blues has made me like excited about the possibilities of, I've not listened to yet, but I've heard of like the dramatized readings where there's like a whole cast of characters and
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Like I think that's very exciting to me.
yeah. I mean, the only audiobook I've properly listened to, and it was almost like an audio drama, but I listened to it for a podcast, which was a Star Trek
Okay.
audio drama with I can't remember the actress's name who plays Seven of Nine out of Voyager. And it had the actress in it and another actress basically doing this audio drama. But that's probably the only time, and that had good production. But it's got it's probably
Yeah.
got like a film or television production type behind it. But it was
Yeah,
good.
no, it's very impressive, in part just considering like Adrian just sort of did all of this independently.
Yeah,
With something, I'm not surprised to see a Star Trek or a Dune or really big hits like those get
yeah,
these really big high level production but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The fact that he's done it off his own back independently is fantastic. It's
Mhm.
brilliant. Any standout reads for 2024? I'll be asking everyone this because we know we're in early February. We can still thinking about our 2024 books.
Sure. Yeah, I will say some of my favorite books last year were, yeah, Lamia, it's very expensive.
Mm.
um I would say my favorite books from last year were probably like um Skin Thief, short story collection by Susan Palumbo. It was a kind of gothic, a little bit of horror, um light fantasy elements in some of the stories, much more heavier ones and others were like, there's serpent people and mermaids and stuff. Other ones are very, very light.
Mm.
um it's not a happy collection, but it's extremely well written.
Yeah.
It's really well done. I also really enjoyed Jenna Rose Nethercott's short story collection, um 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart. In the center of it, there's like an encyclopedia entry of 50 beasts that are all illustrated, and it's just like a very fun. It plays with format. It plays with folklore a lot. It's a very weird but very fun collection. Um, I recently read a ARC for Emily Carpenter, Gothic Town, which I don't think it was one of my favorite books, but it was also like one of the most addicting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I genuinely, especially toward the end, I just could not put it down. I finished that one in January, so not quite last year, but I read a lot of it last year. Um, that was just like a really cool small town horror thing where it's like, family from the city moves into rural Georgia and the place is just not right. Like something is off. And it becomes more and more clear as time goes on, and it gets riskier and riskier to stay. And you continue from there. That one is not coming out until I think April, like March or April this year.
That sounds
something
really
like
cool.
that.
That sounds
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
those were a couple of my favorites. Trying to just like jump around like we were talking about before. I like to jump around between genres and
Yeah,
try different authors out and stuff like that.
that's so cool. We're nearly approaching the hour mark. What are you working? Can you give us a teaser, a taste of what you're working on right now, without, obviously without spoiling anything?
Yeah, so we already talked a little bit about the map design book.
Yeah.
I it's a reference book, so it's uh not like there's not a narrative that I can really tease. Aside from, I can tell you it's going to talk about geology. It's going to talk about um, the climates of different places and how that can impact the map, the culture, the stories that you're telling. It's going to talk about culture and things like not just how to design a city for your map, but why is the city in a specific location? What is it? What benefit does it have from being there? The basic things that a city needs, like food, water, probably like access to trade routes and stuff like that,
Mm.
and how those things could become less important if it has access to a lot of something in particular. Like, we can look back through history to places such as the ancient cities in the again, pronunciation, I'm sorry, the Dasht Elut Desert, which sort of formed a bridge between the East and the West in ancient cultures. And, thousands and thousands of years ago, there were whole cities in the desert without air conditioning, without modern comforts, without easy access to food or water, but they were able to survive there and really thrive because of the trade. And, if you control the inn where people who are traveling can rest, you control all the prices, all the taxes, all the everything. Similar to like the king of Mali, who, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but like there was this old king of Mali who became incredibly rich because of the gold mines they had there,
Mm.
and the people who were coming to trade and all that kind of stuff. And mixing all of that kind of anthropological climate and geological study with map design. And toward the end, it's just about map design. So there's going to be something there for you if you're not going to design your own maps. If you are going to design your own maps, there's going to be some tips on typography, on scales, on creating the framing and everything. But at the end of the day, like the whole goal is to tie it back into your story, because that is the thing that makes it unique. It's not
Mm.
just a pretty thing to look at. It's telling a story about your story. I actually think Lamia, who's apparently my biggest PR person now, thank you. I think that their work and their examples in the book are really, really good examples of that, because their story is so deeply rooted in the environmental issues of
Mm.
like this river that's kind of been drying up and everything, and the ways that people have caused and dealt with that. And so I just think, maps are such a really interesting part of the book, and they deserve to be thought about in these bigger ways. Not necessarily that you'll use all of this information, but that one thing leads to another. So that's the next project. After that, I have some fiction that I want to get back to. I'm very excited about. I might even start drafting one of those when I hand this book off to beta readers. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I mean, that the map book, I'm just incredibly excited about. That's really, really cool. I just love it. Like, there's so many resources now for like aspiring writers, first time authors that are kind of getting out there. Like, I noticed on the TBR con there was the story engine, which is like
Yep.
it's like a deck of cards, which will basically just help you create circumstances and events, and helping you kind of create characters and stuff like that. Just these really helpful guides and resources and stuff like that that I think
Yeah.
probably wouldn't wouldn't have been available maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and that's part of why I wanted to write this. Like, apart from just a self-indulgent fun project for me to write about maps,
Yeah.
it's also like I've seen a lot of how to design a map book, but it's so focused usually on the illustration part of like how to draw a mountain, how to do the river, how to, whatever. There's not, to my knowledge, a whole lot of discussion about, why is the river like this? How does the culture change based on the shape of the river? How does the river changing over time change the international boundaries? Because that's a real thing that can happen. The river ebbs and flows and curves and breaks, and there are real places on Earth where a border was decided by a river, and then the river suddenly changed, and part of the border is no longer on the right side, and it's like, what do you do? There's just like really interesting things that can spawn whole stories or enrich ones that are being worked on. I just think it's such an interesting thing, and like literally, like, what was it? I still have the tabs open from the other night when I was editing something. I've got tabs from like art history research about the Hudson River or Hudson Valley School, I think it was called, a group of American artists who were really affected by the natural landscape, who were kind of forging this new form of American artwork, to the stories of Kublai Khan's invasion of Japan and how the typhoons destroyed the ships and everything. If you're not familiar with that story, that is also truly insane. And I don't have time in this book to fully explain it, but I'm going to try and explain the gist of it, because like that is also part of map design, is like, if you have this remote island nation, there are things that will work in its favor and against it. And we can again look to history and science and all these different things to inspire how might that work in our fictional worlds. Clearly I could go on for another hour.
Yeah. It sounds fantastic. It really does. Sounds brilliant. Yeah, Adam's going to say many authors from the PTSD are leaving them up until after finishing a draft novel. That's brilliant.
That would be nice. I just hope that it's a weird book. I just hope that people find it and enjoy it, and are able to take something away from it, even if it's like a piece of one section within the book. So I don't know. We'll see. But everybody who I've spoken to about it has been interested and more excited than I was expecting. So that's been really nice.
I'm very excited. Very excited indeed. Adam, it's been a pleasure having you on Authors Behind the Page. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. If you haven't read Animus Paradox, you can get it on ebook for now. And then when does the paperback hopefully come out?
Paperback is going to come out on the 17th. You can pre-order it right now, I think. Awesome. You can definitely get a signed copy from my personal shop on adamcbassett.com. Also, all the links to the ebooks are on there as well. It's available on like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Campfire, a whole bunch of others. It might be on some libraries at this point as well. So if you want to go check those out. It's wherever you read those things, it's there.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Whoever joined us live, and for anyone who is watching the replay, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my content. I have another live coming on Saturday with the one and only Mr. Sorry. With the one and only Professor Philip Chase and his arch nemesis AP from Critical Dragon. So I may be having to separate them from furious battles of words. But yeah, they're both joining me on Saturday. live on the channel. I think that's going to be 2 p.m. 2 p.m. GMT and 10 a.m. EST or CST. Would love you for joining us for that as well. Thank you very much, everyone. We are going to be signing off now. Thank you very much, and have a good evening or afternoon or morning wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.